Hello again, and once again my demand for sustenance has driven me to go to the grocery store and back to the kitchen. It just so happened the vegetable that was on sale this week was asparagus. When it comes to cooking asparagus, you must first understand that the bottom fourth of the plant is probably inedible, which means you unfortunately have to perform a bit of an execution here. And just like that, you lose a great deal of the weight of your purchase, meaning that money was now completely wasted. But such is life. Now, in order to make decent asparagus, or should I rather say edible, because no asparagus is decent, you require oil, salt, and pepper. Here we're just going to put a little bit of oil, followed by a little bit of salt and pepper. Now, naturally, you can't live off vegetables alone. Well, you can, but it's very boring. So inevitably, we will be pairing this with pork chops that shall be prepared later in the video. These were also on sale, and these are going to be my sustenance for the day. Excellent. Massage the oil and the spice into the wonderful flesh of the vegetables. And lose one because you're incompetent. Now you're going to want to put these in the oven at about 350. It's going to be pretty simple, and they can cook while you're getting the pork chops done. They should be finished at about the same time. Both of these are going to cook relatively quickly. You can have this entire meal prepared in under 30 minutes. And you'll lose another asparagus. As I stated, I'm not very good at this. The issue with asparagus is it's a lot like liver, where less is more. The more complicated you try to make it, the worse it inevitably becomes. Alright, with that on our cookie sheet, we will throw that in the oven, and we will get to work on our pork chops. Now, with how thin these are, we're going to want to slice them to maintain tenderness and give more surface area for the seasoning to cling to. Unfortunately, flavor is a bit of a hot commodity, so you got to make sure you get the most out of what you have. But nonetheless, we will continue to cut, and we will continue to prepare. What's also nice about this is I don't have any dinner forks. No, I don't have any dinner knives, rather. So having everything cut into pre-fork-sized portions is very convenient. On top of that, I can't eat all of these in one sitting, so this is in many ways meal prep. This will be about 3 meals worth of pork chops. And once it's paired with asparagus, it'll actually be a somewhat healthy meal. But as with all things, health doesn't really matter until you're 30 or at least 26 when you have to start paying for your own health insurance. At that point, it actually matters whether you're in good shape or not. One thing that's very useful about this recipe is, while this is going on, you can have your skillet heating up, and you can prepare for the inevitability of having to cook. But all in all, most of this recipe is really just cutting and browning in a skillet. There's really nothing complex about it. It's a very basic meal for very basic people. Now, what I'm throwing on here is just my preferred pork seasoning. Don't let anyone tell you can't buy a pre-mixed seasoning. There is nothing bad about that. Because to put it bluntly, it contains garlic, it contains chili powder, it contains cayenne. And guess what? Why buy all of those things separately when you can buy them in an effective pre-made case? Saves everybody time. On top of that, if you look at the ingredient list, most barbecue rubs are within spitting distance of each other. There's nothing particularly unique about any of them. Yep, make sure you make use of all of that extra surface area during the massaging process. And now, these are ready for the skillet. Now, I don't want to use oil, so I'm going to use a slab of bacon here, and we're just going to get some fat out of that to cook our stuff in. There we go. Just make sure you rub that fat into the pan, that way it gets into the meat. This is a great way to help add a little bit of extra flavor because bacon is naturally salty just by virtue of how it's made and how it's processed. So this will also give a little bit extra flavor along with a little bit of extra fat to what's otherwise a very lean cut of meat. And now we add our chops. Excellent. Now it's pretty much a process of browning and stirring until you have the appropriate coloration and cooking that you desire. Now you're going to want to have this on a high-medium heat. You're not going to want it on full heat because unfortunately you're probably going to burn it if you do that. This will get you a nice browned crust. It'll have a little bit of char on it to make sure it's still good and has a good plate presentation. And all in all, it's a relatively simple way. On top of that, the 3 meals you're going to get out of this are going to be delicious. That's one joy of cooking stuff ahead like this, is it not only does it make the most out of your pan space, dang it, I dropped another one, but it also makes sure that the prepped of rice and beans that you have has something better to go on top of it to make it worthwhile. Because I get it, you're trying to be frugal, but if it's on sale, you might as well take advantage of it. Excellent. See, what's fun about this, though, is if you're broke like me, if you have your oven on, you can shut off your heater for a while. That way you don't have to spend money on it. You know, like the $5 on your electric bill is somehow going to compare to your $800 rent. There we go. Shake it up a little bit, make sure it's flipped over. And part of this is just sort of shepherding it, making sure all of the pink bits have some time on the surface. That way they can get browned as well. Because unfortunately, undercooked pork is never a good idea. Because unfortunately, I can't really afford to go to the doctor right now, so I'm not going to risk it. There we go. What's also funny is I found out that apparently asparagus actually reheats in the microwave fairly decently, so at the very least, none of this is going to go to waste. Still, it is an exhausting affair. There's one thing I've always found hilarious about people saying our generation can't cook. It's like, no, we just have access to more options. And secondly, if we're not going to be forced to change, why bother changing? Like me, I only cook because I enjoy cooking. Like, I knew how to do this before I moved out. The only distinction now is the fact that I have to do it out of necessity. There we go. And that's the thing. I feel like people will naturally rise to the challenge set forth to them so long as they have the opportunity to learn how to do so. Like me, I've been up since 2 a.m. Why? Because that's when I work. The shift is worth more. Now it's about noon, and this is what I'm doing. Okay, that's about done. It looks like we have all of the pink spots cooked out. Now it's just going to be a matter of finishing off our asparagus. And once the asparagus is done, put all of that together on a plate, have ourselves a meal. On top of that, the rest of this can just go in a Tupperware, and that's part of your pre-prepped protein for the week. Because unfortunately, there was a sale on chicken breast, which means that's all I'm going to be eating meat-wise for the next week and a half. So I will enjoy this brief foray into porcine as opposed to having to deal with poultry. But nonetheless, there is something fun about cooking on the stovetop. All right, let's see how this turned out. Yep, perfectly serviceable. Now we can get our asparagus out of the oven. It should be nice and tender by now. And with how short we cut it, we won't have to deal with any of the woodiness. Now all you have to do is put it together on a plate, and just like that, you have a decent looking meal. Anywho, good day to you all.